Hello, this is Jonathan Frid. I play Barnabas Collins on Dark Shadows. I'll be talking with Ron Barry on The Ron Barry Show again. Thanks for asking me back. I look forward to it later this week on WEST Radio.
My guest on The Ron Barry Show tonight, due to extremely popular demand, and I don't say this just because the man is with me again. As you know, we had Jonathan Frid on this show in late in March, and the throngs of people waiting outside the station for Jonathan that night didn't really surprise me, because I know how popular a gentleman he is, and we had to rerun the interview because of people who missed it. We did that a few weeks ago. And so, without any further ado, and due to your many requests, I want to welcome Jonathan Frid back to the Ron Barry Show. Jonathan, welcome back.
Thank you, Ron. It's a great pleasure, and I'm very flattered to be asked back under the circumstances. It's marvelous to hear.
Well, listen, I know, I think you have a better idea of how popular the show is now, because the first time you were on this program, you had been kind of stuck at Dark Shadows. You hadn't gotten around to meet your fans, and I know that you made your first appearance outside of Dark Shadows on this show, and so again, it's good to have you back because of that. But also now you've been going around the country, you've done the Mike Douglas show, and how does it feel now that you know for a fact, without the ABC executives telling you how popular you are and how popular the show is, how does it feel to you personally?
Well, of course, it's a great feeling, but there's always that thing in the back of my mind, you know, how long will it last? How long can I hold this wonderful audience? Of course, the thing I always think of is that no matter what I do, no matter what towns I go to, and recently I was on a 10-city tour all over the eastern part of the United States, 10 cities in a week, and as you said, I went down to Philadelphia to be on the Mike Douglas show, and when all's said and done, I have to be back in the studio at 8:30 in the morning, most mornings of the week, and I have to put on a show that day. And that is, to my mind, the most important thing, the thing I focus on or try to focus on. I really don't have much time to indulge myself in any kind of an egotism that is natural to anyone who gets this kind of attention. And it's a really marvelous thing, actually. I have to get, my nose to the grindstone all those days, every week, and that is the most important. That's what will hold an audience, if I can do as best I can each day at the studio.
We'll be back with Jonathan Frid in just a moment. My guest, once again on the Ron Barry Show, is one of my favorite people. And today he is a people and not a vampire. My guest is Jonathan Frid. Jonathan, the last time you were on the show, you made a passing remark about, and I think I can quote you, Barnabas Collins came out of his coffin under very strange circumstances. For those of us, and I have to include myself in this category because I didn't see your first couple of shows on Dark Shadows. What were the circumstances surrounding Barnabas's escape from his tomb?
Well, I was sitting home watching the show, as a matter of fact. I knew I was going to be on it, and I was busy trying to fill myself in on the background, and one day this coffin was opened by Willie Loomis, who had turned into a grave robber, and he found the secret tomb quite by accident. Was fascinated by the fact that he saw this coffin with chains around it. And as I say, I was watching this home because my first appearance on the show wasn't me. There was a hand, and when he opened the coffin, a hand lunged out and got him by the throat. That was an extra's hand. It's cheaper to have an extra than it is to have the actor himself for one shot. And I always thought that hand was a little smaller than mine, and I hope nobody noticed the difference. And but I had been in this coffin sealed away for since 1795, I believe, and I probably would still be sealed up if it hadn't been for this grave robber. And that's how I came out. Well, then the next day or a day or two later on the show, I made my first real appearance in 20th century garb, somewhat modish, to still give me an unusual look, an Edwardian mod suit. But nevertheless, it was 20th century, and you had to figure out how I got that in the meantime. Well, apparently I put Willie to work right off the bat. He, if you'll pardon the expression, and he obviously went into the tailor in Collinsport and got me the clothes and made me aware of a few of the modern amenities. And so you had to assume an awful lot from the day I got out of the coffin to my first arrival at Collingwood.
How has your life changed? Not since Barnabas's appearance, but since the stardom took over. Because you are now the star of Dark Shadows, even though there's a name who is on the show. When this particular person is on the show, she gets top billing just because of her name, I think. You're the star of the show. How has your life changed because of Dark Shadows?
Well, really, Ron, it really hasn't changed at all. As a matter of fact, my life, and I've said this so often, and people think, oh, come on now. But it's true, I really have had a very quiet life because of the work involved in it. In my past theatrical career before Dark Shadows, I'd have weeks off, sometimes months off, and during those moments that I wasn't worrying about a job, I would be out goofing off somewhere around town and having kind of a life. But since I've been on this, there are certain weeks when I have a few days off. But I'm in such a habit of becoming such a recluse that I really don't know what to do when I suddenly get 3 or 4 days off. And as a matter of fact, I had that experience about 3 weeks ago, and I found myself sitting in the apartment for those 3 days I had, just sort of catching up with bills that hadn't been paid and so on. And so that's really, nothing has changed, really. Every once in a while, I'll go out on an appearance. Like I was over at the Palisades recently. I was at Stern's department store, and there was a tremendous reception at all these places, and people think, how can you stand this all day long? But it's surprising. Once you've gotten away from the Sterns, and there were altogether there were about 1,400 people there, and I don't know how many of Palisades, and people think that this is going on all the time. It isn't. Once you get away from those places, and you go right back into the neighborhood you live in, I can pretty well live like I always have. Occasionally someone will recognize me on the street, but it depends on how you play it. I could go up 3rd Avenue or any street in the city, particularly on a weekend when there are a lot of out-of-towners in, and even New Yorkers themselves, and I could, if I really were such a real extrovert like that, I could get a crowd going in no time. And of course, as long as you get 20 people around you, there are a few minutes, there'll be 400 or 500 people wanting to know what's going on. It would be easy to do that. I remember when I was up at Stern's, and after it was over, I went downstairs, and there was a limousine waiting for me out on the 43rd Street, and there were, a couple of dozen kids out there, and they were pretty wild, so that they had to get me in that car and get me out of there. And once I was out, it was fine. And then I thought afterwards, if I had said at the end of the show upstairs in Stern's, if I had said, well, I'll see you again, I have to leave now, my car's waiting for me out on 43rd Street. If I had mentioned that car being out on 43rd Street, there would have been 600 or 700 people down there, and then it would have gathered maybe 1,000 people from around, this was Saturday afternoon, right off 6th Avenue. I mean, if you really want to do that kind of thing, you can get crowds anywhere. But I like it, I enjoy it, but, I kill when I'm away from it all, when I'm not actually, on show. If I'm walking the street, if you keep walking and you mind your business, people leave you alone. it's those who keep looking for it that are the ones who say, "Oh, I keep being a besiege of people all the time." Nuts! It's not true. I've seen people like Paul Newman walking along the street, and he and his wife, and they walk along just like ordinary people, and they paint, and they can get away with it. It's amazing. If anybody recognizes them, it's always about 10 feet later, and by that time it's, and you sense. If a person doesn't want attention, people generally leave you alone. There are a few people who have tried to find me out in private life and so forth, but they're really very few. And I've been very fortunate in being able to keep my life pretty well private. But it really hasn't. My life really hasn't changed. I guess I feel very much more confident about myself now than I used to. The main thing that's changed in my life actually is just the simple fact that I've been working steadily for a year and a half, or almost a year and a half, and I expect I'll be on this for quite a while more. That's really been the major change in my life. Not so much this stardom, as you call it, which always makes you a little nervous because you wonder whether you're going to keep that. But it's the security of having a job is for a consistent job. That has been the major change, and this is what gives me real confidence. As for the public image, I can't afford, I'm going to be quite honest about this, I can't afford a press agent at this point. I really don't need one because ABC their press department has been absolutely marvelous, and Dan Curtis's press agent has been marvelous. So I've had it all for free anyway. So, but I would like to get a business manager, not so much a press agent, but a business manager at this stage. But you don't make that kind of money on soap operas. I mean, people think that I live in a palatial home someplace or a fantastic apartment and so on. I live in a very modest apartment, and simply because I can't afford it. Otherwise, I would like to have a business manager to really put me on the map and organize my life. And I may risk that investment. That's what I'm trying to make up my mind about now, is to risk, because I'll practically be broke, and just to have him. And if I could get a business manager, a good one, who could organize my career and catapult it into real money, because at this point all I'm getting is attention, but not real money, not big money.
Well, listen, I didn't want to get into your private life at all.
I enjoy talking about it. Why not?
Well, no, I just don't believe in that type of thing. To close out this segment, and we'll be back with just maybe 2 or 3 more things that I have been wondering about. Do you change your voice at all on the show? The reason I ask this is because the last time you were on this show, we met, and we chatted a while, and I didn't really notice. But after you were on, and after we taped it, when you were on, I listened again, and several people said, "It doesn't sound like him." Do you put something in the characterization in your voice other than Jonathan Frid?
Oh, yes, certainly. This isn't a very popular thing to do in this day and age. There used to be a time, and there are still actors like this, but very few, who want to make believe there's somebody else. And nowadays, which through the influence of the movies, parts are tailored to the actor. I grew up in little theater and college theater, and I was always playing character parts anyway. Like when I was 16, I was playing old men. And so I had to reach out. I had to make believe something else. I was characterizing. And so this has been my way of acting. So that although there are roles that have been more or less like me in certain respects, and I've used my natural voice. But in this part, remember, Barnabas is pretending to be an Englishman. The family do not know that he is the original Barnabas. They think that I've told them that the original Barnabas went to England and married and had children, and I'm a descendant. And so I had to sort of pose as an Englishman, so I've been using a kind of bogus English accent. But as I've gained confidence at being in the 20th century and got to know them all and so forth and so on, I don't think the accent is quite as heavy now as it used to be when I first came on the show, which is a natural development for Barnabas.
Before we break for the commercial, we've all heard now how you sound as Jonathan Frid. We don't usually get to hear that. Can you give us maybe one or two lines, anything, just say anything, as Barnabas would say it, so that we can get the difference?
Well, let me see now. I'll try to think of something out of the show I taped yesterday. I don't know, I can say anything. Julia, we must see to it that Adam is caught before he does any harm to Vicky. Or something like that. I'm not, I find it very difficult to sort of turn on like that out of the blue.
Okay, that's all I want. We'll be back to close things out with Jonathan Frid right after this. My guest on the Ron Barry Show in this final and concluding segment is Jonathan Frid, who plays Barnabas Collins on Dark Shadows. I've been doing a lot of thinking about you after hearing, after you being on the show and watching Dark Shadows and reading articles, that your career, I think up to this point, and I don't even know if you know this or not, is almost an exact parallel to that of Boris Karloff, which is interesting in itself because you're both doing the spooky type of thing. Has anybody ever brought this up to you before?
Yes, it seems to me I did hear that. I gather he had a similar kind of career previous to his first spook part. He'd been around for years and had many months out of work and so forth. But I hope the comparison stops there, because I'm not so sure that I want to make a name in the future just as a spook character.
Well, that's not what I meant, really. You kind of hit upon it. Now, you are, what, about 44? 44. Going on 44. All right. That's really beside the point, the exact age. Karloff had been working in theater, in silent movies. He even did a Tarzan thing, as a matter of fact. Not as Tarzan, but he was a heavy in a Tarzan picture. But his parts were really very small, and he was out of work for a long time. And he turned 45. And Bela Lugosi had turned down the role of the Frankenstein monster, because Bela was just really getting his English working, and he couldn't, he didn't want to take a part that wasn't a speaking part. And to this, and he was a star already in Hungary and in New York, because he'd been playing Dracula on the stage for years. So, Carl Laemmle and James Whale at Universal Pictures hired this 45-year-old actor who had really done nothing up until that point to play the monster. And from then on, his career zoomed. In your case, I think it parallels insofar as we could call Barnabas really your first successful starring role in a series. Now, we'll compare the series Dark Shadows to the movie Frankenstein, just, for argumentative purposes. And I think that, now, Karloff hasn't really been typed so much as you may think, because, he did play Captain Hook in Peter Pan, and he's got a lot of albums out of kids' stories. But it's interesting, I think, that your career has paralleled Karloff, not so much as the spook stuff, but in actuality, in reality, as far as your career. You're almost the same age as he was when he first became recognized as an actor. And I think that's what's happening to you. The last time you were on, we talked about the fangs and the little problems that you have on the show. And to close things out, and I always try to save a humorous aspect for last, you really get some pretty weird mail, don't you?
Yes, I guess I do. I think I really don't like to get involved in the weird male. I don't like to think of it as weird or sick, as a lot of people call it, because it is a need. I don't care how so-called sick the letter is, even the worst of them. It's a very simple desire on the part of each writer for some kind of identification with something that's beyond their own life. Every person I know, every relative I have, has the same basic drive. They only pretend not to, or they resist it, where these people don't. But they resist the impulse. Everybody has the impulse to identify himself. A lot of my so-called smart friends around town do that by going backstage to every theater, every show they go to see. They remotely know some actor, and they love to go backstage. It's not entirely just to say congratulations or how they want to identify with the particular actor they see on the stage who is at that moment bigger than himself. It's that way with everybody. And it's the name droppers, and we all drop. We are all name droppers at one time or another. We love to sort of say, drop it into our conversation. Everybody has this impulse. And so there's not a bunch of sick letters. I get a little impatient with some of them momentarily, because there are so many. But I really identify with people. I identify with what they want, and I only wish I could have the time to really answer each and every one of them. I really mean that.
I'm going to drop a few more names. Grayson Hall, who plays Dr. Julia Hoffman, Roger Davis, who plays Jeff Clark, Humbert Allen Estredo, who plays Nicholas Blair, and Robert Rodin, who plays Adam, are going to join the the cast of the Ron Barry Show, as it were. We're going to hold a bit of a panel discussion in a few weeks regarding dark shadows and soap operas in general. Will you join us, John?
I would love to, and I imagine it'll be a ball, too. I think that you've got quite a collection of personalities there. It should be a lot of fun doing it.
Jonathan Frid, thank you so much for joining us again on the Ron Barry Show for your second appearance, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks for your third appearance with the rest of the cast.
Thank you, Ron, and I've enjoyed it tremendously, and look forward to the next time.